So I'll show you my school shortly. Moved to Blackpool, became members of Blackpool Shul, and sadly, Blackpool Shul was closed in 2012, and we organised a closure service. One of the very few that I think have ever been done, but we invited as many people as possible. You see a photograph of that closing service on the bottom right, with yours truly conducting a scratch choir for the occasion. At the top right is the Shul building. It has since been sold, and they have since failed to redevelop it because they can never get planning permission for whatever they want to build. And a lovely artist came to that final service, and Beverly, top left-hand corner, you can see a photograph of a montage, a collage of drawings and paintings that she put together of that last occasion, which now has pride of place in our dining room. And yes, I was bar mitzvahed, and indeed, if you read the Hebrew, you can see that this week is my bar mitzvah sedra, b'chalotcha, and we even got a bar mitzvah certificate in those days. So, and literally one photograph of my bar mitzvah. That was all. And my little sister Shelley, my mother Miriam, and myself, because sadly my dad had passed away literally 1 year to the day before my bar mitzvah. But moving on, school was a little bit public, as they say. My parents thought it was the best thing to do, which is debatable, but whatever. But I threw myself into my music in those days. I sang in the choir, and I haven't got a picture of the chapel that we sang in, but the top right photograph is indeed the choir, and I'm really right at the very top. Don't bother looking for me. But I got involved in various dramatic things, and this production on the bottom right is one of Gilbert and Sullivan's, called Cox and Box, I played Box, and I had to wear a stupid moustache, so I never wanted to have a moustache since, and a top hat, as you can see, and we had a reunion of the cast and the teacher who put it all together, which is on the bottom left-hand side, and that was a wonderful reunion, and that is the only time I've had a reunion with anybody from my school days, but it was fun.
We wondered why you looked a little older in that picture.
Yeah, well, I always looked old for my age. It's one of the things, but so be it. They made me up to look like that.
Okay, Russell, before you move on, just tell us, where did your musical talent come from? Which side of the family?
I can only think it came from my father's side. He used to sing, and indeed he developed a very close relationship with the minister at Blackpool, Reverend Broslavsky, who moved from Blackpool to Nottingham. But they loved to sing together, and my father in his youth, I'm told, used to sing in the choir of their shul, and I probably picked it up from him, but sadly, as he died so young, we never got the opportunity to develop that musical bent together. But I was given music lessons. My parents bought a baby grand piano for the lounge that was never used, but I was the only person who used the lounge to practice the piano. But when I was at school, junior school, I started to learn the cello. I then taught myself the guitar. I taught myself the trombone, because when I was in senior school, we had something called the Combined Cadet Force. And if I joined the military band section, it meant that I didn't have to go and play soldiers, sailors, or airmen on a Thursday afternoon instead of sport. So I could go and practice in the band, and so I learned to play the trombone and did that. And from there, I took on the double bass and the organ. But singing was always part of my life, and drama productions and the school orchestra, that sort of filled up much of my week and the extramural time. But I did play sport 5 days a week and some evenings as well. I was quite a sportsman and school captain of fencing, which meant that I got to distribute all the proceeds of crime. No, it meant that I represented the school, usually foil, sometimes sabre. But that was my school days. Not really academically inclined. When I was at school, I was sort of directed towards what I call medical A levels. Chemistry, physics and biology, which I eventually got. I won't tell you the grades, but I couldn't develop a bedside manner, and I turned down a place at Liverpool to read dentistry. So I really wanted to become a hotelier. So I went to hotel school in Blackpool.
Why? Tell us a little bit more about why you wanted to become a hotelier.
I loved the hotel business. My parents were very encouraging, taking us away and showing us a good life on holiday whenever it was possible. Once a year, nobody went away more than once a year, but they took us abroad. I got used to staying in some moderate hotels, not particularly swanky. My mother used to go down to London from Blackpool a few times a year to buy from the various suppliers in the schmatter trade, and sometimes I went with her, and so we would stay in the Cumberland Hotel, Marble Arch. That was her favourite place, so I got used to the hotel business. This is a nice thing to do. I had a part-time job when I was at school as a, I think, 15 or 16-year-old in the holidays, working in a franchise of a fast food joint called the Gingham Kitchen, and loved working there, waiting on tables. It was the first time I ever used a microwave, and that was way back in 1968, 69. I hadn't realized until I thought about it that microwaves were around then, but there you go. So studied at Blackpool, got a higher national diploma, won a few awards, did a few internships, and then moved to London in order to take up my career in the hotel business.
So before we move on to the next stage of your career, tell us about your first choice in music.
So I mentioned I learned the cello as a young child and played that in the school orchestra, and developed my piano and cello quite extensively while I was at school. One of the pieces I learned was by a guy called Max Bruch, and it's called Kol Nidre. And of course, in later life, that took on a completely different meaning, because it, of course, is the song which we're all used to hearing on Kol Nidre, which Anthony so ably sang for David Lerner last week. I didn't put Anthony's version of it here, but I thought you might like to listen to the first few bars of what I think is a rather fine rendition of Kol Nidre. I'll leave it at that. I'm getting a message from Melinda that she couldn't hear. I'm slightly worried that you couldn't either.
No, we couldn't. I thought it froze on us.
Oh dear, never mind. Well, maybe the next ones will. And if they do, great. If they don't, so be it. But that was the reason for the first choice.
If the others don't work, you can sing them for us.
We'll edit them into the recording, maybe.
Anyway, so you moved to London to start your career. When was that?
That was in 1974. I lived in Chelsea, just round the corner from David and Freeman and Jane Kaplan's father's bakery, which was a place that I don't recall frequenting, so apologies to them. I spent 8 months in Chelsea, of which 2 months were on the King's Road, above a Chinese restaurant. Then moved to West Hampstead, stayed with Blackpool friends, and moved to Hendon, shared a house, before buying a flat in Harrow Weald in 1976. That was my first move to this area.
Wow. And what were you doing hotel-wise? Tell us a little bit about
my first main job was as an internal auditor with Strand Hotels. Strand Hotels used to have hotels like the Strand Palace, the Regent Palace, the Tower, the Cumberland, and various others. And I used to be sent round on different assignments. I was quite well trained in that position to really understand how a hotel worked. And they were some pretty big hotels that they had. And my last position with Strand was as the assistant financial controller of, guess what, the Cumberland Hotel. So I found myself back at this 900-room hotel doing their books, and you know, really feeling I'd sort of made it full circle. But when I was 18 or 19, I set myself a goal. I didn't actually want to work as managing a hotel, but I really wanted to become a hotel consultant. And I had a mentor, and I had a role model that I wanted to emulate. And so when an opportunity came to join a hotel consultancy, I thought, well, let's go for that. And so I got a job as a junior hotel consultant with a firm called Horwath and Horwath. And nobody will know that name, but they will know the name that it was part of, because Horwath and Horwath was a division of an accounting firm called Stoy Hayward. And so I joined Stoy Hayward in Baker Street and was there for 10 years, 77 to 87, before joining the firm that I had targeted when I was a 19-year-old at hotel school, called Green Belfield Smith. Green Belfield Smith merged into Touche Ross, and Touche Ross merged into Deloitte, and I became part of a firm called Deloitte and Touche, which I rechristened Toilette et Douche, but that's by the by.
Lovely. So tell us a little bit about some of the assignments you went on and some of the countries you visited while you were a hotel consultant.
Let me share some. Yes, we'll move past these. This is me doing what I do quite a lot of, which is speaking at conferences, extolling the virtues of the hotel business. And this, but just by the way, this is why I seem to get texts from people during Wimbledon. How did you manage to get such a good seat? Apparently I look a bit like Roger Federer's father, but as you can see there, I don't at all. But anyway, whatever. So I've had the privilege of working on a huge number of hotels around the world. I really have never added up the total, but it's well into the thousands. But obviously I enjoy going abroad. I particularly enjoy working in Israel, and some of you might recognize some of those hotels that I've worked on in Israel. But my work has taken me far and wide. Someone asked earlier in the evening, you know, which desert island am I actually on? Well, I suppose the one time when I have been on a desert island was in the Maldives. And I have to say, if ever you get the chance to go there, because it is one of the world's wonderful places to visit for a holiday. I, of course, went there for work. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's the only time that Melinda actually looked up where I was going and thought, really wish I'd gone with him. So it was a very pleasant, but albeit only 3 days spent in the Maldives. But a lot of places around the world. These are some of the London hotels that maybe you've never had the opportunity to stay in, but these are some of the hotels that I've worked on, had the pleasure of working on. And my favorite hotel, everybody says, well, what's your favorite hotel? And so the top left-hand corner is Claridge's, and I have to say that is my all-time favorite hotel.
What sets that one apart? What sets Claridge's
apart? Just the quality of the accommodation and the level of finish that you get there is phenomenal. But the service was tremendous. My office when I joined HVS was literally across the street, and there was a barber in the hotel. They had a barber shop, a really old-fashioned barber shop, and I used to go in there to get my hair cut. And after my office had moved to where it is now, and has been ever since for the last 25 so years, which is next door to the Langham Hotel, I had the occasion to go and stay in this hotel with Melinda. And we were doing something, I think some weekend event, and we wanted to stay in town. And I said to my clients of the day who owned the hotel, I said, would you mind doing me a deal? And they said, we'll give you the room. I said, what? I said, the condition is that you need to do a mystery shop for us. So what that involves is turning up incognito, road testing some of the services, ordering hot chocolate at 2 o'clock in the morning, see how long that takes, etc., etc. So there was I, supposedly undercover, and visiting this wonderful hotel. And I arrived by taxi. I don't think Melinda had got there by then. She was coming separately. But I arrived by taxi, and the doorman opened the taxi door and said, "Oh, hello, Mr. Kett." And I said, "Oh, my goodness." And it was the barber who used to cut my hair, who had moved from the barber shop to being one of the doormen at Claridge's. So my cover was blown. The idea of doing a mystery shop went out the window, and I had a very nice free stay at the hotel as a result.
So as long as you didn't have to pay, it doesn't really matter.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. So, tell us about your most memorable assignment.
I would say my most memorable assignment happened in around about 1997. And it wasn't quite looking like this in those days, but this is a resort in the centre of South Africa, in a place called Bophuthatswana, called Sun City. And my client of the day decided that he wanted to buy this and needed it valuing. And so I went along. I took a team of people. This is a huge resort, by the way. It's got 4 hotels, golf courses, casino, entertainment, theatre, huge shopping complex. It's got a timeshare development, etc., etc., etc. And a client of mine wanted to buy it. So that's fine. We go ahead. We look at the business. We get a good property tour. We talk to people. We build up our knowledge of not only the hotel, but what it competes with, and so on and so forth. And I got a message from my client's people that he was coming to South Africa, wanted to meet us before we went back. So we had to delay our departure, and we were told that he wants a presentation of our conclusions. So we beavered away, we cranked the numbers. Now, 97, yes, there were computers, yes, there were laptops, but they were huge and not very flexible. There was nothing like email, and we were really cranking numbers on a very old-fashioned version of something called AmiPro, which was a forerunner of Microsoft Excel. Long story short. Anyway, we were told, get your numbers ready, meet with the client, and see what he has to say. So we fixed up the time for a meeting. I then got a call saying, can you present in 15 minutes? I said, do you mean in 15 minutes time? No, no, no. They said, can you do your presentation in 15 minutes? I said, what? I said, there are 4 hotels, there's golf courses, casino, entertainment complex, theatre, shopping, etc., etc. I said, I can't possibly try, they said. Okay. So an hour and 15 minutes later, we're still talking. The client is asking questions, very good questions, I may say, a really astute business brain. And we thoroughly enjoyed the meeting. And I probably ought to at this point, which I don't normally do anyway, but confidentiality being what it is, but I ought to disclose that this was my client. And Michael Jackson was a most engaging person in those days, not the airhead we'd all been led to believe. So I had the privilege of working with him, and he invited me to dinner the following night, which was very nice. The entire cabinet of South Africa trooped into this dinner so that they could eat with Michael Jackson and me. And the one person missing from the cabinet, sadly, Nelson Mandela. So I didn't get the chance to meet him, but I did meet the rest of the cabinet of the day. So that's probably my most memorable assignment for reasons that you can probably realise.
Yeah, so I think that will lead us neatly into your next choice of music, disc number 2.
Well, everybody associates me with going to sunny climes. I do go to some very wet places, or have been to some very wet places. But yeah, this is Desert Island Discs and sunshine. And yes, Belmont was bathed in sunshine today. So this combines sunshine with my favourite all-time band of the Electric Light Orchestra. Can you hear this?
Yes.
See how the sun shines bright in the city on the streets where once was dead. Mr. Blue Sky, please tell us why you had to hide away for so long. Where did we go?
I do hasten to add I wasn't at Glastonbury.
Before I ask, so were you involved, were you working the whole time, or did you get a day off? Were you involved in any youth groups, Jewish youth groups, other youth groups?
When I was a kid, growing up in Blackpool, we had Habonim, and in my later teens, I got involved with Younger JNF, and we had a committee in Blackpool called SANDS, and I got involved in that before I left to come back down to London. And after that, when I came down to London, because of my connections already with Younger JNF, I joined a Younger JNF group here in London. And it was really quite fortuitous.
I was going to say, why was it fortuitous?
Because it brought me into contact with other people from Younger JNF. Now, you may remember Younger JNF in those days had the slogan, social life with a purpose. And there were a series of events held by the various committees, dances on a Saturday night, very often. And a very long story short, I got quite involved in the hierarchy of Younger JNF and got elected chairman, or whatever it was, president. And one Christmas time I was visiting my family in Blackpool, and there was one of the committees in Manchester holding an event on Boxing Day, I think it was. So I went over from Blackpool to Manchester and found myself in the company of a group from London who had come up for the occasion, one of whom was called Melinda Sackheim. And she didn't quite look like that, but she was the queen of her committee, and had been entered into what was called the Queen's competition in those days. And that's where I first met Melinda, way back at the tail end of 1975. So there you go.
And so you met her? Anything else happened?
Well, we started to date, as you know, and I'm amazed that we made it to a second date, because the first date was to go to the cinema, like we all did in those days. The choice of film, I guess it must have been mine, was Peter Sellers' Return of the Pink Panther. And I apparently spent the entire film rolling around laughing. But life, you know, life is beschert in a way. I was working in the hotel business, and guess what? Melinda was working in the hotel business. She was working at the Holiday Inn Swiss Cottage, which is now the Marriott, but she'd started there as a 16-year-old working there. And by the time I met her, she was working as the general manager's secretary. So we dated, we got engaged at the tail end of 1976. And we got married in June 1978. And now we've frozen.
Oh.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm just waiting. Maybe unshare your screen and start again.
Me?
Yes.
Oh dear. Do that again?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
We've got Melinda again.
Okay. And we got our sound back.
Yep.
Okay. So we got married, and there's her lovely parents, Leo and Marlene. And there's my mum as well. So she got into the act as well. So and that was us on our wedding day. No comment.
Looking lovely, spruced up, as they say.
Yeah, scrubbed up well.
It was scrubbed up well.
So we lived in North Harrow, another coincidence. That's where the Learners lived when they were first married. And we were members of Pinnershall. And we moved to Cannons Park and to Belmont in July of 1984. We moved to Belmont because the people that we knew from the Hame, Lynn Shaw and her husband by then, Graham, they lived in Belmont, and so did Jane and Michael Kaplan, who we had been on an engaged couples course with for premaritals in those days that was run. So that takes us to Belmont in July 1984.
Okay, well, before we go on to Belmont and your time there, tell us about your next choice of music and why you chose that.
With pleasure, with pleasure. I just flashed past these photographs and the...
Oh, no, well, who are these people?
These people, well, there's Justin on the left and Nicholas on the right. And some of you might remember them from their school days and their Purim days. Justin will and Nick will talk about later, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But my next choice of music, thank you. I was still doing quite a lot of amateur performing, and one of the songs that I used to perform ad nauseam, and probably got up Melinda's nose as a result, is a song by a guy called Tom Lehrer. Now, Tom Lehrer is an American professor who dabbled in writing songs and wrote some wonderful songs. One of them was called Poisoning Pigeons in the Park. He did a wonderful take on the chemical periodic table, where he literally set the words of the periodic table to music, to someone else's music, albeit, but a wonderful piece of music. So this is a song called The Vatican Rag. I'll try and play some of it with you. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, my apologies again. But The Vatican Rag, I hope, is known to at least some of you.
First you get down on your knees, fiddle with your rosaries, bow your head with great respect, and genuflect, 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 and make do whatever steps you want if you have cleared them with the pontiff. Everybody say his own Kyrie eleison, doing the Vatican rag. Get in line in that processional, step into that small confessional. They're the guy who's got religion. I'll tell you if your sin's original. If it is, try playing it safer. Drink the wine and chew the wafer. 2, 4, 6, 8. Time to transubstantiate. So get down.
I think that's probably enough.
Which I suppose bring us neatly to your involvement with Belmont Synagogue.
I guess it does. I guess it does. Well, you've told everybody what I did, so no need to reiterate all of that rubbish.
Well, when were you on the board of management?
Oh, long time ago. I really in the I'd say the late 80s, mid to late 80s and 90s, and then somebody foolishly suggested that I put myself forward as a warden. Which I did, and curiously enough, I applied once, and I went for election once, but failed to get in because I was travelling. And where was I travelling? Buenos Aires at the time. Just a coincidence that's just popped into my head. But second time I did get elected, I became a warden, served with Norman Rubin. Wonderful tutor, absolutely wonderful tutor. And then my partners in crime were Jeremy Jacobs, Graham Morrison Wood, David Harrod and Nigel Hart. Really enjoyed my time as a warden. But there was a lot more to do then than I'm told there is now. So we just got on with it and did it. And
did you do anything else when you were in Belmont?
Well, I guess so. One of the things that we did was we actually produced, I think it was Belmont's first strategic plan, but we decided that we should look at the long-term future of Belmont, and we wrote a strategic plan. I remember working with Rhoda Goodman at that time. Rhoda was on the board of management, and she and I and maybe some others, and I apologise, we put that together, and that was ahead of the Calms report. So I think we were accused at that time of being a little bit ahead of the game.
Well, another first for Belmont. Always good. We were always ahead of the game.
We're always ahead. Well, Stanley Calms turned around when we eventually met, and he'd read, one of his people had read the strategic plan and said, well, you don't really need the United Synagogue, do you? And we said, well, occasionally for money, but that's about it. But yeah, I was in the choir. I enjoyed singing in the choir. The Purim spiels were good fun. The one Purim spiel that I will always remember was when I did a duet with the late Denise Harrod, which was a parody of Victoria Wood's wonderful Barry and Frida song. So
is that a cue into your next Desert Island disc?
Well, it might well be, but I ought to probably tell you that I also got involved through the United Synagogue with JFS. Both of our children had attended there, and I started off by chairing the Catering Review Committee, got involved, as one does, became a governor. We were closely involved with the development of the new school at Kenton that David told us about last week. I then became chairman of governors once we got the school open, and there was apparently not much more that I could do to damage the place. So all I can say is from Belmont, then I just want to say that one of the things about Belmont is finding wonderful friends, and friends like these you can't dream up. And over the years, we became known as the Grosswood Ketts. I suspect because we used to hunt in packs, and we were very often invited as a sixsome. But they are the dearest and closest friends that one could ever imagine. And had we not moved to Belmont, we wouldn't have had this wonderful friendship. So JFS led on to the United Synagogue, and my work for the United Synagogue became as a vice president and trustee. Got involved in selecting the new chief rabbi, and one of the particular pleasures was to organize the farewell event for Rabbi Sachs at the Barbican, and to get involved with the strategic review of the US with the help of some people from McKinsey, which is a great experience. And the only thing I'm now really doing is as a vice president of the London board for Shechita. So that's pretty well it with regard to it. This is just a montage of photos taken at the farewell event for Lord Sachs, which really had as the meat of the sandwich Lord Sachs being interviewed by David Frost, who curiously passed away literally the night before Lord Sachs finished his term of office. But this is us at the Barbican. The bread of the sandwich was music provided by the Shabbaton choir and 300 kids, which was great. But you asked me about my musical choice. It is a little bit of an extract from Victoria Wood doing the proper version of Barry and Frida, and I'll just take it up to the first verse, and the line which Denise sang, which was you'll hear what the original line is, but her line was, "I can handle half the tenors of the Belmont choir." So remember the Spinners.
I'm not putting my hand up. I'm too young. Lovely, but just I mean, we were talking before tonight, just going through your memories. You did say that organising the event for Lord Sachs was one of the most memorable experiences for you of your time with the US. So.
It certainly was, and it sort of combined my singing with the Shabbaton choir, which is this next slide. And you know, in the past 20 odd years since I've been singing with the choir, we've been, I'm going to say, literally all around the world. It's not quite all around the world, but we've had the privilege of being invited to Israel many times, going with Lord Sachs to America on 2 occasions. And one of the proudest moments was to walk down West Pico Boulevard in Hollywood and seeing this enormous billboard announcing the arrival of Chief Rabbi Jonathan Sachs in huge lettering, which really made us very proud. But the Shabbaton choir is something which has given me a lot of pleasure. I've had 2 spells as chairman, one when we started a series of missions to Israel, and now the last couple of years to try and help the choir develop and grow. And all through that time, sadly, until he passed away, we had a very close relationship with Rabbi Lord Sachs. And some of the other things that led on to, if you see the bottom right of that photograph, you'll see young Anthony Brozer. And Anthony's brother in 2003 was working with a medical center in Tel Aviv called Reut. And we went to sing there. Did a Friday morning visit and also did a fundraising concert for them. So Anthony's brother David introduced me to Reut, and I became a trustee of Reut in the UK for a time. Thoroughly enjoyed our visits there. Melinda and I have been back there many times. It's a wonderful place, but nobody really knows about it. It's like so many institutions. And also in our time, and again a slight Belmont connection, we helped establish something called Young Weitzman, which is, or was in those days, a sort of younger version of the main Weitzman committee in the UK that raises funds for the Weitzman Institute. We wanted to raise funds for cancer research at the Weitzman Institute. Founded this committee and roped in David and Judy Levinson, who happened to be neighbours of ours at the time, and I'm pleased to say that they also got involved in that in their day. So another Belmont connection. And whilst we were with the Weitzman committee, I met a Belmont member shortly after we joined, called Stephen Horn, who was featured by the committee in one of the Speaker's Corner events recently. And he was an amateur theatre producer, and he encouraged a number of us from Belmont to take part in something called 40s Follies, and a name that some of you may remember called Steve Waxman. He and I trod the boards together, but most importantly, Lynn Shaw was one of the troopers who joined us and sang her heart out and danced her heart out, and is a really very good performer. So shout out for Lynn.
So does that lead us to song number or disc number 5?
I think it probably does, and it won't surprise you that I'm going to play, and I'm not going to play very much of it, but there's a wonderful video of the choir, the Shabbaton choir, actually recording Oseh Shalom way back in 2008. And it's now had getting on for 3.5 million hits, but this is the very beginning. And I hope you'll enjoy seeing some of it.
The 60th anniversary is a really, really great moment. And we know that when we're really excited that something great has happened, we have to sing a song to Hashem. And the best song we can possibly sing is Oseh Shalom B'Maramoth Yaseh Shalom Aleinu. We want just one thing above all, for Israel, for the Jewish people, for the world, that there should be peace. Here we go. Oseh Shalom B'Maramoth Yaseh Shalom Shalom Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'al Kol Yisrael V'yimaru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'Noam Yaseh Shalom Shalom Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'al Kol Yisrael V'yimaru Amen. Oseh Shalom Shalom B'Noam Yaseh Shalom Shalom Aleinu.
It does go on a bit.
Lovely, lovely. I could listen to it all day. But we saw a picture of Justin and Nicholas a few minutes ago. What are they doing now? Bring us up to date on what's happening with your lovely family.
So Justin is the deputy head teacher and head of Kodesh at Saks Morashah School. And you can see him there with a bunch of his children at, not his children, but his school children, along with Rabbi Mervis at something called Etgar, which is an annual quiz competition that attracts thousands of Jewish children in primary schools throughout the country. And they all converge on Wembley, Wembley Stadium, that is, and get together when times are not stricken with COVID. But he also is involved as a trustee of a charity called Jewish Interactive, and that raises funds for it's a technology-based charity that provides Jewish learning through the medium of our computers and the internet. And if you go onto their website, that's the picture that you get of Justin, who's one of their trustees. So, and the other two, everybody's familiar with, because thankfully he comes and stays with us from time to time and is invited to daven from the Omid on a regular basis. So we're all used to hearing him. And this is our other son, which I occasionally refer to as Rabbi Nick. And this is when they got married, his lovely bride Shira. And at the top left you see Melinda with her counterpart, who those who've attended Sinai School will know as Mora Ada. And as you've all worked out therefore, that Nicholas married a man. And Ada Man is Shira's mother and teaches at Sinai. And there you have a few more shots of various things that went on at their wedding, which was in Jerusalem, and still gives us a lot of pleasure and pride to think about it, even though it's more than 10 years ago. And the love of our lives now, of course, are our wonderful grandchildren, Miri, the oldest, Donielle in the middle, and Dassie, who's 5 going on 65. She'll be 6 next month, but not next month. It was going to be next month if we were doing this next week, but it's in July. But our lovely grandchildren who we adore and love to see, and that's what they get involved in. And Nicholas has become a pretty well full-time TV producer in producing programming and shiurim and events and whatever for Bushy Shul, where he's now the community rabbi, working with Rabbi Feldman as the senior rabbi. And he's on his own this week because Rabbi Feldman's on holiday in the States, but gets involved in so much there. And I get such a pleasure from joining him from time to time for various shiurim. And the reason you can't see him on your screens tonight is because he's running the Let's Talk While the Chicken Soup's Cooking event in Bushy at this moment. But very proud of our family and our grandchildren who really do seem more than just a credit to their parents.
Lovely. So I think that brings us neatly to your last disc.
It sort of does. And again, I crave everybody's indulgence, if you don't mind, because at Nick and Shira's wedding, they asked me to sing Im Eshkachech under the chuppah, which I managed to do despite feeling hugely emotional. And this is one for Carol Hart. I managed to hold it together without bursting into tears, and that has been my my forte throughout the whole of my married life, is that I can get really very emotional from time to time. And that was a real 3-handkerchief job. But Nick and Shira came out with this a little while ago, over just before Pesach, and I happened to get my hands on this, so I won't play too much of it, but if anybody wants to hear the rest of it, maybe after the program's finished we'll play more of it. But this sort of speaks for itself.
Nick and I were extremely blessed to be getting married overlooking the old city of Jerusalem. One of our most memorable moments of our chuppah was listening to the following words being sung.
Not
Well,
a dry
I'm sorry.
eye in the
I'm
house.
sorry, Carol. I apologise. It's all my fault.
Not a dry eye in the house. Don't worry. Don't apologise. It was wonderful. We all loved it. Russell, we're coming to the end. So I have to ask you if and when we take you to the Belmont Atoll, what will be your luxury item that you take with?
It's got to be a piano. It's got to be a piano. Somehow I'll put it on my back and strap it or whatever. And it can't be an electric piano because, you know, it needs a power supply. And I'm not going to pedal that fast to be able to keep a power supply going. So it would need to be a piano.
It would need to be a piano. And a book that you would take with you?
Well, my book would be a Mac book.
Oh
dear. But with a life supply of batteries. Or if it couldn't be done, a Corin edition of Chasse. I've admired Graham Morrison Wood and Nick for having done the whole of Chasse in this last 7.5 year cycle, and I think they both started again. A wonderful, wonderful achievement. And I've always thought that whenever I was able to retire and had some time on my hands, I'd love to do some real proper learning. And so they're an inspiration to me. And so that's probably what I'd take as my books.
Lovely, lovely. Well, thank you, Russell, for sharing your Desert Island Discs with us tonight. It's been lovely hearing your stories, listening to the music. It's been wonderful. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And you've been both our castaway and technician, so you know you're very resourceful. So I've no doubt that you'll do very well on the Belmont Atoll.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you. So next week will be the last in our current series of Desert Island Discs. But our castaway will be our dear chairman, Barbara Maslier. So I'm hoping that you'll all join me next week, 8:15 next Thursday. To hear more about Barbara and share some of her favourite music choices. So thank you to Russell again for being our castaway tonight, and to everybody else who's joined us tonight. I hope you've enjoyed the evening as much as I have. It's been wonderful and loved, particularly the last one. He smashed it. And we'll see you all next week. Shabbat Shalom, everybody, and hope you enjoy a very sunny and happy weekend.
Wonderful evening. Wonderful.
Lovely.
Lovely. Absolutely
Thank
lovely.
you.
Well, Russell.
Absolutely amazing. Thank you.
Lovely,
Yeah.
Russell. Very well. Very well.
Russell.
Brilliant. Brilliant, Russell and Karen.
Yeah. Thank you.
Lovely evening. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, Russell. Terrific.
So interesting. Thank you for
Pleasure.
sharing.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Russell.
Fabulous.
Good night. God bless.
We'll see you.
Bless.
Bye.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Take care.
Shalom.
Shabbat
Shabbat
shalom.
shalom.
It is now.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Russell. Well done.
My pleasure. Well done. Well done yourself. Well done.
Our pleasure.
Oh,
Our
Mr.
pleasure.
Kett. Mr. Kett, how nice to see you.
Yes.
You've been there all the time.
So I'll talk to you.
I'm going to say goodbye. Thanks, Karen.
Bye-bye. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you,
Shabbat shalom.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye now.